You're listening to Sarah Hagan Backstage, with interviews and insights from years inside the music industry. Join Sarah as she talks with masters of their crafts, finding out what makes them tick, both inside and outside of the music business.
Welcome to Sarah Hagan Backstage. My guest today, Omar Hakim, is a drummer, producer, arranger, and composer with an exceptional career in the music industry spanning 50 years. Omar has worked with a who's who of artists and acts, including Weather Report, David Bowie, Foo Fighters, Sting, Madonna, Dire Straits, Bryan Ferry, Journey, Kate Bush, Miles Davis, Daft Punk, Mariah Carey, David Lee Roth, and Celine Dion, for example. We are going to talk about his amazing career, what he is up to now, the recent Taylor Hawkins tribute shows that he helped put together, and we will get some invaluable advice for the next generation. So come along with me as I catch up with Omar Hakim. Omar, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Sarah.
Hey, it's so good to see you. I know we were just saying it's been a very long time.
Yes, indeed it has. It's great to see you too.
Yes, and I want to talk a little bit about first, what have you been up to the past couple of years, and how did you kind of come through the pandemic and everything that changed for you? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the pandemic was tough for me, like it was for most musicians. My band that I have with my wife Rachel Z, keyboardist, we have a band called Osmosis, and we had just finished an EP in 2019. We just put it out. We had a tour booked for 2020, and it all fell apart, and put us all in a panic, of course. So it was tough. Of course, we were sick during the pandemic. And my mom was also passed away during the pandemic. So that was also really tough. So, it's funny because a lot of people were saying, oh, during the pandemic, I stayed home, I recorded, I did all the stuff. It was the opposite for me. I didn't go into like deeper music mode. I think what I did go into was more of like almost like a introspective kind of meditative mode with it, and I got a chance to spend a lot of quality time with my mom in the last year of her life. So bittersweet from that standpoint that, okay, well, all the work and everything was canceled, but I got to spend a really wonderful last days with my mom.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I'm so sorry to hear about her passing away. It is I hear what you're saying about, like, a lot of people saying, well, I had all this time to record and to, create and all of that. And then I also hear a lot of people say, I didn't really want to do music for this time. Like, it kind of made me pause a little bit, but I'm so glad that you had that time.
Yeah, I really needed it. I really needed it, because most of the time I'm going nonstop doing things, it's always something going on, touring, recordings, I'm fortunate that I'm staying busy with this and that, working on projects, writing music, working in my studio here, there's always something to do. So the break was like, ooh, okay, I'm kind of forced to do this, but maybe I actually didn't need this,
Yes. Yeah. One thing that stuck out for me from these conversations, Ronnie Vannucci actually said to me, he said, I never knew that these flowers grew at my house in the springtime because I was never home in the springtime. I was always touring. And he said, I thought to myself, what? Didn't realize we had these beautiful flowers that grew in front of the house.
Right. Isn't that crazy?
Right. And I get it. And I just thought, like, wow, that's a really, like, great visual.
Yeah.
When we talk about, the amount of time that, artists are touring and away. And then once you have that realization, it puts things in perspective. And I know that you've been very, very busy lately. We're going to talk about that. But did that time cause you to change your thoughts about the level of touring that you were doing, or the pace that you were keeping?
Well, I certainly wasn't touring as much as I did when I was younger. You know, like in the 80s and 90s and even into the 2000s, I was basically like insanely busy,
Yes.
you know, when the call came, you know, you say yes to everything, right?
Yes.
And, you know, my kids were young and, you know, so it was all about getting out there, making a living, staying in in the hustle and doing my thing, you know.
Mhm.
But as I get older, I'm a little more selective about being on tour and who I'm doing that with, and you know what I mean? Being on
Yeah.
the road is it can be fun sometimes, but it's also a lot of work. And I think it's more the traveling than the playing actually that
Right, right.
takes its toll on your body and on your, you know, on everything, you know.
Absolutely.
Playing, you know, is sort of the shortest part of the day. It's you know, getting back to the hotel at, you know, 1 in the morning, but then you have a 5 a.m. flight, you know, and you just finished playing a 3-hour show and you're exhausted, and then you know
Yes.
and all of those kind of wacky things that happen on the road, or arriving in the town in Europe, but your hotel is not ready until 3, but you've landed at 10 a.m., you know, and
Right, and you're exhausted and you
you're
just
exhausted, you really need a bed, and there's a sound check at 4 o'clock, you know, you know, those
yeah,
kind of things, you know, so
yeah.
people don't see the kind of the wacky behind the scenes stuff that goes on tour. But then I've also been with a lot of acts that do tour very comfortably and they're super successful. I've worked for a lot of pop stars that, you know, private planes and all of that. And that's certainly a much more luxurious way to tour. So I've sort of experienced all of the levels of the music business over the last 50 or so years of doing this. And that blows my mind to say that, whoa, I've been a professional drummer for 50 years.
It's amazing. It's so amazing, and when I get ready for these podcasts, I always do make a little outline and
Yep.
just because I don't wanna miss anything,
Mm,
and making your outline and kind of going through your discography, it made me a little nervous, I have to be honest, because I was like, "Oh my gosh," just recalling all of these things. I know all these things that you've played on, but recalling all of them and kind of, like, putting them right in front of me all at once, I was like, "Oh my goodness, Omar." It's just what an amazing body of work that you've amassed over those 50 years. It's just incredible.
it's been quite a ride, and it's been fortunate. Yes, I have worked very hard. I love music. I love drumming, but I don't take it for granted.
Mhm.
I'm grateful when the phone rings. I'm grateful that people are still interested in what I'm doing. I'm grateful that people call me to collaborate and to get my opinion, musical opinion about what they're doing and how I can help them. So
Yeah.
this is what drives me to continue doing it. You know, it's the love for it, and it's the a lifetime of dedication to it. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And, speaking of that, I wanna talk about a call that you recently got,
Mm.
um, to work on the Taylor Hawkins tributes, the tribute concerts.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, how did that come about that you were involved? I mean, I know that have worked with the Foo Fighters and you know Taylor and
Yeah.
all of that. How did that come about for you to be involved with putting that together?
Well, maybe I should talk about how I met those guys, because
Yes.
I've been a huge fan of the Foo Fighters ever since Dave started the band. He's of course, an amazing drummer. We all know that.
Mhm.
He's also an incredible writer and vocalist and guitarist, and you know, he's an amazing musician.
Yes.
And so, nothing but love and respect for what he's done over the years. And Rachel, my wife, knew that I was a huge Foo Fighters fan, and I think around it was 2010 or 2011, they put out a record called "Wasting Light."
Yes.
That is like one of their masterpieces, as far as I'm concerned. And
Absolutely.
that record basically stayed on repeat in our car and on tour during that time period. So when we get home, she says, "You know, the Foos are playing at Madison Square Garden next week." And we had just got home. I was like, "Oh, well, I didn't know they were playing. We got to get tickets." So I go online and I check. Tickets are sold out. Dang. How are we going to do this? Then I thought about it. I said, Taylor and Dave play Zildjian cymbals,
Yes.
right? So why don't
Yep.
I give the guys at Zildjian a call? I think I think I called John DeChristopher, and
Yes. Yep.
I said, John, can you connect me with Taylor and Dave? They're coming to New York. I'd love to see the show. And he said, no problem. He said, I'll send them an email right now, and you'll probably hear back from them in a couple of days, 2 or 3 days. They always get back, and so I'll send that out. Actually, I'll send it out in a few minutes. I got a couple of calls. I'll send it out. Great, thanks, John. Hang up the phone. I checked my emails. About 2 hours later, Taylor wrote back in 2 hours.
Oh, I love it.
I was like, whoa, that's crazy. And the message was lovely. He was like, dude, we know who you are. We love your playing, blah, blah, blah. We got you. How many tickets do you need? And I was like, whoa, that's just wonderful. So Rachel, myself, Jerry Brooks, my bass player, my drum tech at the time, I don't remember who that was, because it's like, 12 years ago, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We go to Madison Square Garden. The show was incredible. And when we got backstage, Taylor met us backstage. We took pictures. We were hanging out. He said, Omar, I'm really sorry. Everybody wants to meet you, but Madison Square Garden is a zoo. So why not, we're playing in Newark, New Jersey tomorrow, right? And we live in New Jersey. And he's like, you should come to New Jersey because we'll have more time to hang. It won't be so crazy here. And I was like, oh man, thank you. I don't want to really be a pain. You really hooked us up, and I don't want to be that guy that. And then I get an elbow in the back. Bam! It was Rachel. I go, oh yeah, I'm definitely coming. I'll
yes.
be there. So the next day, it ends up that I met them at their hotel in New York. And I took the bus with them to the venue in Newark. On the bus was Taylor and Chris and Nate. Pat wasn't there. Dave wasn't there. I think they were with their family or whatever they were doing, and they were traveling separate. But I had a great hang with Taylor and Nate and Chris on the way there, talking music and whatever. And the first thing that Taylor did when we got to Newark was he marched me right to the stage of the drums, because we were talking about Gretsch drums and his kit. So we go straight to the drums, like two drum nerds.
Yes.
And I got a chance to sit down and play the kit and admire. We did all of that, and it was so much fun. And then he said, hey man, Dave just arrived. He wants to meet you. So I go, he takes me back to meet Dave. And then he basically is like, listen, I got some other friends that are coming. I'll leave you guys just hang, whatever. And so I end up in the dressing room with Dave. And what was odd about meeting him for the first time was that he and it wasn't like I was meeting somebody for the first time. It was more like I was meeting someone who was very familiar.
Yes.
And it was almost like, instead of a conversation that was like a person you didn't know, it was almost more like we were catching up, like old friends. And it was an odd kind of really interesting exchange, and he's and everybody knows he's like mad cool. All of those guys, I mean, the whole band, they are very down to earth, really super mad cool guys. Just you're gonna have a lot of fun if you hang out with the Foo Fighters, and you're gonna laugh your ass off, and the music's gonna be awesome. And so we became friends after that. And oddly enough, in particular, Dave and I stayed in touch even more with Dave over the years than Taylor. And so I would get invited to different things. I know when he was doing the movie about purchasing the recording consoles, the Sound City documentary.
Sound City, yes.
I think there's a little cameo in there. And during that time, we set up at 606, their studio, double drums, and we had a lot of fun jamming together. Fast forward, 8-10 years after that, when they were doing the Medicine at Midnight album, their last studio album, Dave kind of described this approach to what they were doing and how he was thinking maybe I could come in and add some percussion parts to some of the Taylor's grooves that they were working on. So I ended up spending a couple of weeks with them during the making of the Medicine at Midnight record. So, you know, it's this has been sort of a relationship that developed over the years. Um, so when Taylor passed away, actually, let me just go 6 months before that, or even 5 or 6 months before that, they played a gig. I think it was Bridgeport, Connecticut. And Dave was like, man, we're coming east. You got to come to this gig. And he kept checking in with me, come to the gig. So we went out to the gig, and it was an incredible gig. We sat on the side of the stage, Rachel and I, checked out the show. That was the last time I saw Taylor live. In fact, when he did the part of the show where he goes out front to sing and Dave plays drums, Somebody to Love, right, by Queen. I hear Taylor go in the mic, where's Omar? And the crew and everybody turns around and looks at me, and Dave motions with the sticks, get up here. And so it turned into this really fun jam. And that was my first time jamming with them.
I love that.
We had a fun time. And after the gig, you know, we celebrated the release of Taylor's record that had just come out, the NHC project with Navarro and Chris Chaney on bass. And I was just telling how much, you know, we thought that was so banging, you know. And so that was a beautiful evening of Taylor playing his buns off, and you know, me hanging with them and seeing him really for the last time.
Wow.
The day before he passed away, Dave texted me from South America and said, it was kind of a funny text. He says, we have a bet on the bus. Who's the bass player in Let's Dance? And the reason he asked was because Nile Rodgers was going to be on the same show with him.
Oh, gotcha.
He's going to ask Nile to come up and play Let's Dance. Dude, we wish you were here to play Let's Dance. Who's the bass player in Let's Dance? So we were going back and forth in text, you know, and I told him it was Carmine Rojas on bass. It's incredible bass player. Yeah, and then the next night I get that news.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that was a kick in the gut to everybody who loves the band, and of course the fans. And you know, he was so beloved all over the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that was tough. So a couple of weeks later, I went to LA to check in, just to see how Dave was holding up. I mean, a couple of months later, we were having a conversation, and he had mentioned the idea of doing this tribute show. Would I be into doing it? You know, of course, whatever you need, you know, say the word. And so he was kind of filling me in on it as it was developing. He was, you know, kind of keeping me in the loop. And I think I was the first guy out to LA for the rehearsals, because they had a bunch of drummers, as you know, Freeze, you know, Baby Shane playing his buns off.
Yes.
Out.
That was just, I have to say, Shane getting up and playing and nailing it and channeling that energy was.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was incredible. So I went out like at the very top of August to kind of be the rehearsal drummer in many ways. I was there, you know, while things were getting worked out. I think the first two guys there were me and Josh Freeze, actually.
Wow.
You know, and so, you know, and I think maybe for the first week it was me, then Josh, who was on tour, arrived back in LA. Then it was kind of he and I helping the Foos kind of put everything together. Right. And then all the other drummers started coming by, you know, Stuart Copeland. And when we got to London, we had another week of rehearsal with Roger and Rufus Taylor, with Nandy, Stuart, you know. So it was a really incredible, beautiful tribute The music was incredible. Like I said, everybody played and sang their hearts out. And yeah,
It was
yeah,
beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful, and, just seeing the community come together and the drumming community, because Taylor, for as much of a superstar as he was and kind of transcended the drum throne, if we
yeah,
can say it that way, he was so, like you mentioned earlier, so into the gear
yeah,
and the people, and he was just a drummer's drummer, and he was into everything that we're all into. So I think,
yeah,
anyone who really came into contact with him felt that, and I was surprised by that when I met him
yeah,
for the first time. I felt like, wow, like you said about Dave, just talking to someone who you've known somehow. And
yeah.
with Taylor, just geeking out on drum gear and the companies and what was coming out and who worked where. He knew all this stuff. And I was like,
Oh yeah,
that's
yeah.
incredible.
No, it
Um,
was incredible. And he's a super generous guy. I mean, I heard a story, and I think it was one of the videos during the tribute where, the accountant wanted to know why there were all of these Guitar Center charges on Taylor's credit card. Like, or he called the Guitar Center. He goes, "Hey, are these charges real? Like, Taylor doesn't need to buy all this gear." And the salesman says, "No, no, no, you don't understand. A kid comes into the Guitar Center and if Taylor's there, Taylor will buy that kid stuff. He will buy a cymbal pack for him and hand it to him, send him out the store." I mean, he was so generous,
mhm.
and also a great singer. You
Yes.
can't forget, like, he was really a great performer and a great singer. So, this is and then the kind of family knit vibe that they have with each other with the Foo Fighters.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a lot of these bands, they when you're together for that long, it's not a band anymore.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's a
Yeah.
family, and losing a family member, you know, that's what it really is at the end of the day. I mean, those guys, Dave and Taylor, there's plenty of documented footage of their friendship and the love that
Mhm.
they have, for each other and also with the band. So,
Yeah.
you're really aware of this energy
Yes.
when you're spending time with these guys.
I agree. The respect level, I always appreciated the respect level. I
Oh, yeah,
one thing that comes to mind when you just said that was, Dave, an incredible drummer, as you mentioned, and coming into a band where a drummer is now the singer, guitar player, and now you're
yeah,
playing drums. That's a big deal. And I remember over the years working at Zildjian and asking Dave to do promotion, any kind of promotion, and he would always say, "Taylor's the drummer. Taylor is the drummer. Like,
right,
Taylor
right,
is my drummer. Like, and I'm playing guitar and I'm singing, and Taylor's drumming." And that was always really significant to me, that he
yeah,
always, like, would shine the light on
absolutely.
Taylor too.
Yes, yes, absolutely right. And I think that that also shows his generosity, because at the end of the day, he's an incredible drummer, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
But he's also disciplined as an artist, and he understands how important it is to create a band dynamic.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? As well as he can play,
Yes.
he understood that what's going to make the Foo Fighters work is that the sum of the parts are going to what make this thing great. And
Yes.
by having a kindred spirit drummer person, Taylor, who could adopt his concept, because again, with the odd thing too is when the drummer becomes the singer,
Mhm.
um, and they need another drummer, whoever comes in has to be willing to sort of learn how they think on the instrument.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
and if you go back and you listen to the first Foo Fighters record, which is all Dave,
Mhm.
and the second Foo Fighters record, which is again mostly Dave, right?
Yes.
he's an incredible orchestrator of drum parts,
Yes.
and they're deceptively simple on the surface.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're not paying attention, the stuff goes by you so smooth, that
Yeah.
you don't realize the orchestration with even where cymbal crashes are placed and the kick drum patterns and how they vary slightly between the verse and the chorus. It's like when I sat down it's one thing to be a fan of the music and, listen to it as a fan, but it's another thing to actually sit down and play it.
Yes.
And to do the study. So when I put on the drummer hat and I'm like, okay, let me go back and listen and really learn these parts, even that middle section of Pretender,
Mm-hmm.
there's a way that they, there's a breakdown.
Yes.
And then they reconstruct the drum beat again. And how they do it over 8 bars is really interesting.
It is. Yes.
And I know any Foo Fighters fan that's a drummer knows what I'm talking about with that song.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So it's really interesting that that over the 25 years that Taylor, monster drummer himself, was able to take everything that Dave does and make it his.
Mm-hmm.
And then they made these incredible records.
They did.
So it's really it's an incredible story, and I think the music speaks for itself because it's people, we're all still listening to all of those records up, and what's remarkable about them is that they stay in the game.
Yes.
So every record is growth. That's pretty amazing. Most bands after 25 years, they can go out playing their hits from 15 years ago.
Absolutely.
And never make another record ever again. But what's interesting about this crew is that they keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And
yes.
they keep writing new music and they keep collaborating with people. And like I said, the Medicine at Midnight record, there's some really incredible stuff in there. But even the Concrete and Gold album, I mean, every record has a single, it has something that they've arrived at, a new approach to something, an exploration that keeps it fresh. It's pretty badass, actually.
Yes. Yeah. And I hear you on the growth thing. It's amazing. And I have to say, you mentioned Wasting Light and how that was in your CD player in your car forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just have to tell you a really short story, but it was when that came out, I had this advanced copy that I was so excited, super excited about this record. Had it in my car. It stayed in my car. It was the only thing in my CD player for months. And then I was in this car accident. It was a really, really bad car accident. The car was totaled. I was fine. It was not my fault.
Right.
But the car was towed, to the lot that it gets towed to when a car is totaled. Wow. And all I wanted from that car was that CD.
Hit the eject button on that.
I went to the lot and I talked to the guy there and I was like, I know the car is dead and it doesn't turn on anymore. Is there any way you could get the battery going so I can get this CD out of the CD player? And he did it for me. He got it out. I still have it. But it was one of those memories. I was like, I can't let this go. I have to have it. So,
it's a brilliant record.
Yeah, it was so great. So speaking of projects and touring and the, bands being like a family, you mentioned this earlier, but you're actually in a group with your wife and the incredibly talented Rachel Z, who I've had the pleasure of spending a little time with too.
Yeah.
Such an incredible musician. The music that you both make together is beautiful in osmosis. And how are things going? Do you have plans? Did you do makeup tour dates from the pandemic?
We had a few makeup tour dates, but then we started writing new music again, and we were like, we need to kind of tweak the direction of the Osmosis project.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're back in the studio again, working on some new music, sort of taking our time. We thought we would get it done a lot quicker, but then we were like, you know what? It's better to just take a breath and make sure we're super duper happy with the new direction. So I think that we'll keep working for the rest of the year. And the idea is to put out a follow up to Osmosis in wow 2023.
Yeah, which is coming sooner than we realize.
We
It's a
are
little crazy.
yeah we're
Um,
starting we're in the third decade of a new century here, you know. So it's like
wow.
how I look
Wow.
at it, you know. It's like when
Yeah.
you like that, right? It's like,
When you say it that way, my goodness.
yeah.
But that's amazing. And are you recording in the studio that you're in right now? This is
Yeah,
your
yeah, we work at home. Even though the first EP, we tracked a lot of it at Power Station,
Mhm.
York City. We did a little kind of a deal with Avid, our friends at Avid. They had just put out a new piece of gear that they wanted to promote, and it was an opportunity for us to use that piece of gear to record.
Mhm.
I said, yeah, that'll be cool, you know. And I love Power Station; it's one of my favorite studios on the planet. So,
Great.
you know, you get an opportunity to get in there. It's always fun. But then but when we were done with the basic tracking, actually everything was finished and mixed here. And we even
Okay.
cut one of the songs from top to bottom here just to finish off that EP. So the new record, the whole thing will be done here. And for me, I mean, I started getting into the home studio thing just for freedom, really. I mean, I did a record for a label, you know, when I first got my record deal, and you know, watching the clock and the whole budget thing with the label, and I was like, this is not fun, you know.
Right.
You know what I mean? And then you know you do this record, and then you know you have this huge bill that you owe the label that they pull out of your royalties, and I was just like, you know,
Mhm.
I don't want to do another record like that. And it was from there that I got really serious about being able to record at home. And I had already been doing it, but I think I needed to bump up the level of the equipment so that I could do finished masters at home. I was doing my demos and everything, and I had some of the early MIDI gear and the early Macs, and I had like the version one disc of Performer when it first came out. You know, I mean,
Wow.
you know, I was like at the very beginning of MIDI. You know, that's my age.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing to me because I knew that about you, that you had really, like, embraced technology early on when,
Yeah,
maybe a lot of people were kind of like, "No, that's foreign to me." You embraced that, and it gave you this, like, added edge to what you were doing, and,
and it
you
was
know
survival. It was mainly survival because you know I always made the joke that Roger Lynn changed a lot of drummers' lives with that dang Lynn drum. You know, because
Yes.
what happened was, you know, a lot of people didn't need to hire drummers anymore, you know,
Right.
and a lot of the music of the 80s that became the sound on the recordings, you know, was it became a drum machine. You know, some of the biggest records of the 80s have drum machine on them, you know. So
Absolutely.
so for me it was like, if I can't beat them, I'm gonna have to join them. You know,
Yeah.
so I marched my butt down to Manny's Music on 48th Street, New York City, and bought myself a Lynn drum and read the manual, learned how to program it, and then I reprinted all my business cards and put drum programmer, percussion. I had to add drum programmer in there, you know.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
I think it was good. It was good. You know, and I was young, so it was like I'm just getting started. I can't,
Mhm.
you know, be defeated right at the beginning of what I'm doing here, right? It's like
Absolutely. And
so
isn't
let's
that it's amazing how, like, something like that can actually change someone's perspective about what sound is, right?
oh
Like,
yeah,
so, like, we all think about the drum sounds of the '70s, and you think about John Bonham and the big, like, booming kind of, like, rock and roll sound, but when
exactly.
you think about the '80s, you think about those electronic drum breaks, like,
Yeah,
that's what it was. It's just
yeah.
it's amazing.
And
So
even with the acoustic drums on those records, you know, the whole gated reverb concept,
yes.
you know,
Yeah.
so you know that sound of gated reverb and you know the big booming drum sounds on the you know the David Bowie record, the Hall and Oates records, you know, Power
Mhm.
Station record, you know, there's a bunch of records, Phil Collins, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
so that is that sound, you know. It was fun too because on the tribute show, the LA show, we had Mark King from Level 42, the bass player,
Oh, yep.
and he did Something About You on the show, which evidently was one of Taylor's favorite songs. I mean, that was cool. The show was really the artists that Taylor loved, artists that he worked
Mhm.
with, songs that he loved. And so I thought it was really cool that Mark King came through and paid tribute.
That is so amazing. I love that too, just knowing, Taylor's love for Queen and Rush and, having those artists involved and then on the other side of it, like having Nandy involved as this
Right?
you know,
Absolutely.
young woman who is, oh my gosh, I love Nandy and her dad and her
Yeah.
whole
Oh,
family. They're
yeah.
just incredible people, and to see her
Absolutely.
grow and then to see the Foo Fighters respect, her talent and give her a
Absolutely.
platform.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Beautiful.
it's like it was beautiful, and it's an encouraging, all-inclusive kind of vibe that Dave and the Foo Fighters have created in
Mhm.
the business, and it's really beautiful. The human part of just loving music and being a musician, and keeping the fun in there, and keeping the wonder of being a musician. I mean,
Absolutely.
I think that's why I'm still doing it. I still have that sort of wonder and that love. I still get excited about new music. I'm still a fan of music. You know what I
Yes.
mean? I'm still
Absolutely.
I'm still looking for that song, that,
Yes,
makes me
the
feel a
songs.
certain.
Yeah, well, what happens to you when you hear a song like that? Like, is there a physical reaction that you feel when you know that,
Well
oh,
well, when I wanna hear a song over and over again, you know what
yeah,
I mean?
yes,
That's the sign. That's like, "Oh, yeah, play that again."
yes,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
right? When the CD goes in the CD player and you don't let it
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Let's play that one again. So, this is the part of music that I love, and I think Dave talks about it like that. And
Yes.
we've had some great talks about these kind of things. So yeah, it's a
Amazing.
trip. So hopefully, the new Osmosis record, we can get a few songs in there that people want to play over and over again.
Absolutely,
That's my
absolutely.
goal with
That's
that project. To kind of do that.
that's
You
the
know.
goal, right? And,
Yeah.
so what else I know that you have some things coming up that you're working on. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the next thing up is I got invited to do the Percussive Arts Society meeting this year. I haven't done it in a while.
Yes.
And yeah, it's funny. Clinics are interesting for me because I even though I have technique and I've developed technical language over the years, my playing is kind of more, the approach isn't solely technical
Mhm.
because I'm always kind of looking for the best way to make the music feel good. So sometimes when I get asked to do clinics, I'm sort of like, what am I going to talk about? Because I just saw, a half dozen YouTube videos where guys are just, ripping the drums to shreds, and there's like a pile of sawdust on the floor where the drum set used to be, and I'm like,
Yes.
what am I going to do with that? But then I remember, well, no, I have other things to talk about. I
Oh,
have,
yes.
you know what I mean? And um, I think that the beautiful thing about the drumming community is that there is room for all of these conversations. I think that the conversation about technique and chops, that's like one conversation. And
Mhm.
then there's the conversation about music and what makes a person. In fact, I decided to call my session "What's More Important, Chops or Choices?"
Oh, okay, I like that.
That's not even a well, I don't know. Is that, maybe that title, depending on who you ask, it might be like if you ask a table full of drummers at a dinner, it might start a food fight. Perhaps. I don't.
Well, we'll find
They
out. We'll
start
have to.
flying.
Yeah, right, we'll have to go to dinner at PASIC and see what happens. No, but
I don't.
that's really ingenious because when you think about what you just said with the chops, and of course, chops are important and it's fun to watch chops happen
Absolutely,
and,
absolutely.
it's fun to see the sawdust fly, but when you talk about the juxtaposition between that and Choices, where you're not playing all the notes, you're choosing what to do, right?
Yeah.
Instead of doing it all. That's a really good title. I like it.
Yeah, and I think that it opens up, because again, I think what I was trying to do was I really want to open up the conversation. There's going to be plenty of guys there talking about, the technical things, the rudimental things, and all of the things that make up the language of drumming, and how the language of drumming supports the overall language of music. And that's how I look at these things. To me, I more look at it as a language.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so for me to, over the years, kind of dip in and out of these different languages inside of music styles, jazz records, I've done rock records, I've done dance records, I've done reggae records, I've done all kinds of things, only because I never marketed myself as of a one stylistic kind of drummer. I never said I'm a rock drummer, or I'm a jazz drummer, or I'm a this drummer or that drummer. My goal as a musician was to just be a worthy collaborator. That was all that I was trying to do out here. And from that standpoint, I don't have to say no to anything, but I can challenge myself to go into a situation and hopefully make a meaningful contribution to the music. That was all I was trying to do.
I love that. And that keeps you working. It keeps you, in being able to go from genre to genre, because if that's your goal, to really serve the music and be a collaborator, right? That's
right.
That's what musicians need, which is
that's absolutely. Yeah, it's like, everybody has that one annoying friend that speaks a bunch of languages, and no matter where you go, they know how to speak, like wherever you go, they're like, dude, when did you learn how to speak Urdu? Like,
right. Yes.
It's like, it's one of those things, and it's true that the person who speaks the most languages ends up having the most fun, because they're kind of going around and they're free. They're kind of, and so music was the same way. Well, if I speak that and I speak that, and I can have fun with David Bowie and Weather Report and the Foo Fighters and Anita Baker and Daft Punk, and no matter where I go, I can enjoy their language.
Absolutely. It's so smart. And I kind of want to go a little bit back in time and talk about when you first started playing. I know you were really young. You were five or so when you started playing drums?
Yeah, I started playing at age 5. Started with a little holiday gift from a family member of a toy snare drum that,
love it,
for some reason, I had an immediate affinity to it. They put it around my neck, and I immediately started playing some marching drum cadence I heard on TV or whatever, and it just was very natural for me to play. And then my dad purchased a real Ludwig snare drum for me, which I still have. I found it the other couple of months ago.
Oh, that's so sweet.
1967 black lacquer Ludwig 5x14 snare drum, which sounds amazing, actually.
I bet.
Yeah, and so that's kind of near and dear to my heart. And then my first gigs were with my dad. Started gigging with him at age 10. He had a band called the Nomads, Hassan and the Nomads, and then the tagline was most embarrassing. It was featuring Omar Hakim, the 10-year-old drum sensation, which I was like, oh God, so from 10 years old, 11-year-old drums. He had. Yeah. I was part of the act.
Right, absolutely.
As a kid, and my memories of that are like, kind of walking into the gig, but then being so wiped out at the end of the gig at 10 years old that I don't even remember how I got home. I would just wake up the next morning in bed.
Oh my gosh.
Dad would carry me back in the house and put me in the bed. Is that all a dream?
Oh, I love that.
It was like a family band. It was my cousin played sax and flute, and my godbrother was a percussionist who actually was my kind of first drum teacher. And but then I studied with a guy named Walter Perkins in Queens. He was also known as Baby Sweets. Great
Okay.
jazz drummer who played with my dad. You know, they were friends. Um, and then there was another drummer who really got me straightened out, a guy named Clyde Lucas. Um, he was a drummer, one of Count Basie's drummers in the early 70s.
Wow.
And there was a club that we used to go to in the hood called the Village Door. And it was where the older jazz musicians would go to keep their chops up and jam. And the
Mhm.
younger crew would also show up. So, you know, I remember going there with Marcus Miller when we were kids, and
Oh.
a great keyboard player, Bernard Wright, rest in peace. He just passed recently.
Mhm.
Another great keyboard player, Donald Blackman, Denzel Miller, Alvin Winky Flight, the sax player, Tom Brown, trumpet player. There was a bunch of us that used to go to the Village Door, and that's kind of where we got our jazz thing together and get yelled at by the older guys.
Rightfully so, right? That was
Yeah.
like part of the teaching.
Oh yeah, yeah. You gotta, you gotta get whipped into shape
Yeah, pay your dues, right?
and pay your dues. Go through the boot camp. I'm grateful for it. You know.
I love that. I love that. And when you were so young coming up and you were mentioning jazz, but did you have um a vast, listening preference? Were you into
Absolutely.
different styles? Yeah.
Yeah, because that, at the end of the day, at that age, that was still my dad's music on a certain
Yes.
level. Even though I'm playing it, I'm there, it's fun, I'm doing my thing, I love music. But the kids my age, we were listening to, you know, AM radio, everything that was on hit radio, R&B radio. So,
Mhm.
everything from, let's see, the Beatles, the Stones, the Temptations, the Supremes, the Jackson 5, the I said the Rolling Stones already,
Mhm.
Jimi Hendrix Experience, Sly
Yeah.
and the Family Stone, Earth, Wind and Fire, Aretha Franklin, Otis Redding, I can the Jefferson Airplane, there's, the Doors, there was all this music on the radio, and it felt like pop radio during this time period wasn't so segregated. I kind of
Mm.
remember turning on pop radio and hearing everything from the British invasion bands to Motown.
Mhm.
And it was really cool.
Yeah.
You know? And if you had a great song, those records crossed over. American back then R&B or soul music, of course, it would have the songs would have a journey sort of on the regional soul and R&B charts or the black music charts. But then the ones that would cross over into sort of the larger market, the pop.
Mhm.
And again, what's funny is we didn't have the internet back then. So the record business, you could have regional hits. There,
Yeah.
there could be a band that was famous in New York that nobody knew about in California,
Right.
or even or Ohio, or a band from Miami that, so when a little band from Miami blows up called Casey and the Sunshine Band, and all of a sudden their records are being distributed all over America. Or same with Motown,
Yeah.
started in Detroit, but then, the music was so strong that, it created this explosion across the country. And it was really an exciting time
Yes.
in music, because all of this musical information um, was being disseminated out there at a critical time during the civil rights movement and everything that was going on in the United States. So it was an incredible time. It was a tough time in America, but the young people were really trying to move things forward with the music, And so
Yeah.
to grow up during that time period and witness that was pretty amazing. And then I became a teenager just as fusion was starting to happen.
Right.
And so, to see Tony Williams go from Miles to the Lifetime thing, and then the beginnings of Weather Report and Return to Forever, and all of these bands, and coming up and watching the convergence of jazz and rock,
Mm-hmm.
and how, we go from, trumpet and sax being the lead instrument to synthesizers and guitars becoming the lead instrument because
Right.
of the sound and the language of rock music getting fused with jazz. And
Absolutely.
I kind of remember hearing right before Jimi Hendrix died that there was talk of a Miles Davis Jimi Hendrix collaboration. I think I read that as a kid in like a Rolling Stone magazine or something. And so when Hendrix
Wow.
passed away, I was really bummed out because I was like, wow, what would that have been like if Miles and Hendrix had made a record?
Amazing. I
So
can't.
it was, yeah, interesting time.
Yeah, incredible. And I think about that too. I mean, you think about those musicians who um were gone way too young and what
Mm.
they could have contributed had they had 50 years, in the
Yeah,
industry. What would have happened and what would we have been gifted with as far as
no,
music goes?
it's true. And even, like again, speaking of Hendrix specifically, a lot of people don't realize that all of that work that he did, I think, was a short time period. It was only like 4 or 5 years.
Yes,
It
it
seems
was.
like it was, 10 years of work, right? But it all
Mhm.
happened like 5 years.
Right, right. So compressed, and it just
Very,
it just blows my mind to think about that, like what it could have been,
yeah. Even the Beatles, when you think about, you
Yes.
know, what they did between 64 and 68, or, it was like, that's pretty amazing too. Sometimes these things happen
Yeah,
in really intense explosions of
it
music.
is. Right, it is. It's like a flame that
Yeah.
kind of goes up and it's hard to imagine that it was that short of a time period and
Hmm.
watching the Beatles, watching Get Back, um, I tell everyone to watch that documentary. It's
Yeah.
genius. It is really, really incredible to see this time period in their work together and what came out of it. What those songs to see those songs that are just absolute classics
Oh yeah.
be created, how they were created, how they interacted with each other, the different personalities, and then to realize that how short of a time period it was that they were actually active
Yeah.
as a band. And you think about the Beatles, they've, it's been decades and decades of their music being,
Oh yeah.
on the radio and out there and, our children listening to the music too.
Oh
And
yeah.
then, to realize that it was such a short span and what could have come from more. I
Oh,
don't know.
it was remarkable. I watched it too, and what was really cool, and I've been seeing some other things on YouTube, footage of them on the Ed Sullivan Show, when bands would come on, and they weren't lip syncing; they were playing live, and
Yeah.
they were a great live band. And I think it was because they did pay the live dues. It wasn't like right now, people make a record and they go out and they play,
Mhm.
but then they have, a Pro Tool system running in the back and with, half the music or whatever they're doing. But back
Mhm.
then, they talk about the story of the Beatles in the German clubs playing, half dozen sets a day. You do that for 6 months, you're going to get really tight.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so as a live band, and that's kind of how I grew up playing in live bands, like even when I think about Nile Rodgers and Chic. I mean, I met Nile when I was 12 at
Wow.
the Jazzmobile workshop in Harlem. And he was free lessons for the kids.
Mhm.
So, and then he and I had a band that was one of those like band shell bands at an amusement park. We
Oh,
were,
very cool.
yeah, like in the band was we played at Great Adventure, Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey here.
That's so
And,
great.
and yeah, you'd walk through the park, and there we were. The group was called Brown Sugar because there were three girls out front, and Niall
Yeah.
and myself and the keyboard player, and they were kind of like the Supremes, but we would do this music. It was like the pop R&B charts of that year, whatever that was, mid 70s, before
Mhm.
Chic Days. But we were playing all day long at the park. We would
Wow.
do a half dozen sets. The gig would start at noon and we'd get off at 6 and sick from cotton candy and hot dogs and like really. really tight.
Right, right, exactly.
Really, and so that playing, that work ethic,
Hmm.
is that experience of connecting with other musicians, and that it's invaluable and a beautiful feeling too of playing
Yeah,
with your friends.
exactly. And again, the amazing array of musicians that you've played with, it just is a testament to that, to your work ethic, and also to your ability to really connect with people, because people like the David Bowie and Celine and Daft Punk, they want to work with people that are easy to work with, and that they get along with too. Madonna and
Yeah.
Sting, and that it's a testament to you,
Mm,
for sure. Absolutely.
thank you.
And I am super excited for PASIC, of course, because I get to see you in person.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so I'll put some information in the description, and I'll make sure that everyone knows how to get there. It's
Yeah.
November 9th through the 12th in Indianapolis, and
That's
like,
right.
what an opportunity to get to see you present a clinic. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation and to kind of connecting with the community. It's been a while. I think mine is on Thursday, the 10th of November. I'm not looking at the calendar.
Yep, Thursday is the 10th.
Thursday the 10th. Yeah. So mine, I believe it's in the afternoon around 2 p.m. And
Fantastic.
yeah, so it should be fun, kind of working out, what I'm going to do. But I think just that subject matter alone will spark a great talk, a great Q&A, and yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, yes, me too. I cannot wait. And I will definitely include all the information. I will make sure that everyone has links to your social accounts and everything, so they can
Cool.
pay attention to what you have coming up, and check out when you do finish that recording, they can check it out. And before we go, I just want to ask if you have any advice to drummers coming up, the next generation, that kind of thing, besides pay your dues, because that's important too, right?
Well, really, the main thing about this journey of being a musician is about the love of the music, and it's incredible because that love can deliver you to places that you never imagined or dreamed of. But it's really all about kind of believing in that, and committing to um, what you believe in, to the point where you remove the fear of like, am I going to make it, or is this going to happen? As long as you're doing it, it's already happening. You know what I mean? So
Mhm.
at that point, it's just about following the music, and that's what I always tell people that I did. Well, what did you do? I just followed the music. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
um I did a clinic once, about 20 years ago, and this mom gets up in the audience. She goes, well, so what would you tell my son about, having a safety net, and it's really important to do this and go to school and blah blah blah, and and really, just kind of getting a safety net. And I said, well, ma'am, I have some bad news for you. I said, if you're really serious about this, you're going to have to remove that safety net.
Yeah.
Oh boy, silence.
Yeah.
Because the problem with the safety net, and I'm not saying don't have one,
Mhm.
but what I'm saying is just understand that when things get a little bit tough, people just know they can fall into the safety net.
Sure.
But when there's nothing left to lose, you know what I mean? Then
Yes.
you find yourself like, this is what I'm doing. This is that leap of faith. This is my faith in my gift that the
Yes.
universe has bestowed on me. Whatever name you give to your higher power, this ability to do this thing that you've been given to share with humanity. This is it's an odd thing, because if you believe it and you decide to go down that spiritual path of being an artist, then it's like, well, I'm doing this. I love this. I'm doing this. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So it's all about that passion for me.
I agree. And I think no matter what you're doing, right? It's about the passion.
Oh yeah, because it doesn't just go for music. It's like if you want to be a surgeon, or you want to be an attorney, a lawyer, or you want to be whatever job you're doing in the world, a fireman, every job requires that same level of commitment to do it well, to be great at it.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so being an artist, being a musician is no different. It's all about the passion and staying connected to your love for the thing.
Absolutely. I love that, Omar. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you coming and being my guest today, and cannot wait to see you in just a few weeks in Indianapolis.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I will see you soon.
Indeed. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in today. Join us each Tuesday for new episodes of Sarah Hagan Backstage.